Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Christina Bura and I'm the General Chair of FSE 2020. So I would like to welcome you all to this edition of the conference. So this is the first time that FSE is online, and I also hope this is actually the last time, and next time we will be able to have a very nice physical conference. So I will start with some attendance statistics of this online event. So as you can see, we have a lot of participants, so 321 in total, and people come from very different countries. So we have 38 countries represented in total. So most of participants come from China, and we also have surprisingly a lot of participants from the United States, but I guess this is in fact due to the fact that the conference is now online. And then France has a third line in the third place in the podium with 40 participants. So for this event, we have two sponsors, Infer and Rambus, and I would like to thank them for their financial aid, that it was very important to organize this event. So let's say a little bit how the program will be. So here you have a high vision of the program for the 5 days of the week. So as you see, every day, the technical sessions start at 7:30 UTC time, and every day has a particular event. So on Monday and Friday, at the end of the day, we have Ask Me Anything, a session. So we have the pleasure to have Jon Damon and Kaisa Newberg. So this will be the opportunity for you to ask them all the questions you always wanted about their career or the vision on the field. So this will have to ask the questions on Zulip, and then you will get the answer on Zoom. We also have two invited talks. So we have one invited talk by Thomas Perrin, and another invited talk on Thursday by Kazuhiko Minamoto. So it will be always at the same time, Tuesday and Thursday. And finally, we also have a RAM session. So RAM session will be on Wednesday. It will start at 10 and it will end at 11:30. So if you want to talk at the RAM session, you have to please read the guidelines on the FSE website and send your slides no later than Wednesday at 7:26:23. This is a very strict deadline in the sense that if you send your slides later, then they will not probably get into account. So that's all about the program. Let's see a little bit how this virtual event will be run. So you have already probably seen long videos of the technical talks are all available on the ESR YouTube channel. So you're welcome to see them. And then the technical talks, so online, there will be, the authors will present a 5-minute kind of abstract of their work. So you can follow the sessions both on YouTube and on Zoom. Of course, you have to be registered. And if you have questions about these talks, then it's the same as for the other sessions. You have to ask your question on Zulip and then get an answer on Zoom. So please go and read the ESR Code of Conduct. In particular, when you register to Zoom, please use your real professional name so we can clearly identify you. And please don't write any comments or share any pictures that are inappropriate. Also, when you're not speaking, then please mute your microphone. A remark also for speakers and moderators. So both, if you're speaking at the next session, please show up 10 minutes before the beginning of your session. So organizing this event was a hard task, because we had to planify it in March, then cancel it, and planify it again in November, then cancel it, and finally go online. And if we have here today FSE, this would not have been possible without the help of many, many people. So first of all, of Kevin McCarley and Kate McKelly, that helped us a lot, as they did also for all previous ESR events of this year, to set up actually and run this virtual conference, and a big thank to them. I also would like to thank a lot Brian Lamatti and Douglas Stabilo, that helped a lot, really a lot, especially for when we were planning to do it, the event physically, about all the technical and also financial issues. The program chair, so we have 3 because we have like 6, 7 issues represented. So Itai Dinur, Gaetan Laurent, and Yu Sasaki also did an excellent job to choose all these high quality papers that are going to be presented. And also we have to thank the FSE steering committee and ESR emergency committee that tried to do the best to find a solution to this, to the situation in the pandemics. Of course, we also have to thank all the participants, in particular the session moderators, and all the volunteers, the authors, speakers, and attendees. So that's all from my side. So I wish you an excellent FSE conference. And I guess now it's Kay or Kevin that would like to say something, or it's directly Itai, I don't know.
I'll say a few words about the program. So as you might have seen, the program is kind of dense. We have at least the technical sessions. We have 76 papers to be presented overall. They are taken from 7 issues of TOS, the IACR transactions on symmetric cryptology. 6 of these issues are standard issues, and 1 is a special issue dedicated to the NIST lightweight crypto standardization project. So you can find the links to the actual papers in the program webpage. And there you can also find the links to the full videos. And in the sessions, we will have a short version, kind of a high-level talks, but the full videos are available, as I said, on the program webpage. And as Christina also mentioned, we have kind of special sessions. We have a RAM session on Wednesday, so please submit your talks. We have 2 invited talks, and we have 2 Ask Me Anything sessions. And I think that's basically it for me, and we hope that you will enjoy the program. Kevin and Kay, would you like to say something about maybe the Zoom rooms and some technical issues?
Yes. So during the after this session, we'll have breakout rooms. So that will be a short social break, sort of like a coffee break. You can also access chat.iacr.org through the program or directly. And that's where you should ask your questions primarily during the sessions, and the moderators will be looking at those. And if you have technical issues, you can directly message Kevin or myself on Zoom, chat.iacr.org, or you can email virtual-conferences@iacr.org. So that's it.
Okay, great, thanks a lot. So I think we can begin with the first session of the conference.
Okay.
So the session will be about the NIST lightweight standardization.
Okay, so welcome to this first FSE session. So as Itai said, this is the first session on about the NIST candidates. So the first paper that will be presented, it's about Dumbo, Jumbo, and Delirium. So these are candidates to the NIST competition. And Bart Menning will go on to present his work. So Bart, here you go.
Yes, I hope you see my slides now. I'm sorry, I was struggling with my computer. So thanks for the introduction. It's a great honor to actually be the first presenter. So this is a joint work with Tim Baine, Yulong Chen, and Christoph de Bruinig. As it's the first talk, let me quickly actually explain what authenticated encryption is mathematically. So it's a function that gets its input a key, it gets its input associated data and a message, and optionally it gets its input a nonce. And using the key, the message is transformed to a ciphertext C, and the associated data and the message are authenticated with a tag. And the nonce is optional to randomize the scheme. Now, this is a lightweight authenticated encryption scheme. So if we go for lightweight, there are many different things that we need to consider. Do we optimize for efficiency? Do we have to want to have a scheme that's good to implement in software and hardware? Or do we want to have a scheme that's really good against protection in fragile environments, for instance? And the goal of Elephant was slightly different. The goal of Elephant was to develop a scheme that uses a cryptographic primitive that is as small as possible. So we wanted to minimize the state size of the cryptographic primitive while still meeting the expected security strength of 2 to the 112 and the online complexity limit of 2 to the 50 as imposed by the NIST call for proposals. And the first thing you have to consider then is which cryptographic primitive to use. And there are many different primitives that we can use. The most notable ones are 3-equal block ciphers, or a permutation. But if you think of a 3-equal block cipher, it's a function that gets as input some data. There is the data output, but on the side, there is all stuff coming in, like a key and a tweak. So if you design a 3-equal block cipher, you need to make sure that this happens with care, that the crossing happens with care. Likewise, a block cipher also has a data path, data coming in, data going out, but there is some data coming in from the side, namely the key. So you need to make sure that this happens securely. And thinking about permutations from this perspective, we don't have a traffic sign that doesn't have a side road. So from this perspective, a permutation is just a highway, and it's the best choice for designing a lightweight primitive. The typical way of using a permutation for a lightweight application is the sponge. We, however, use a parallelized approach. So we have a permutation evaluated in parallel. We've got some input data that goes to some output data, and then we mask the input and the output using a proper masking. And the goal, recall that the goal was to minimize the permutation size, and this really helps in achieving our goal. The masking is a simplified version of masked Evan-Mansour, where the masking is computed by first computing a subkey from the key that doesn't change, so there's no nonce input. So the key is just appended with zeros. And then we have an LFSR phi1. We compute a different phi2 as a function of phi1. And the mask is phi2 to the power b after phi1 to the power alpha after evaluated on the subkey. And using this, Elephant is really simple. It fits on one slide. So we have the nonce that is input to all permutation calls. So we don't append it with a counter. So just the nonce goes to all permutation calls. The input and the output is masked using this masking function, where the counter values A and B are used to vary the mask. So B is kept 0 and A runs over the number of message blocks. This gives a key stream that's added to the message to get a ciphertext. Then the associated data, the nonce and the ciphertext are padded in a specific way in such a way that we only have blocks of n bits, where n is the permutation size. And then these blocks are processed individually using, again, this masked primitive, mask permutation call, where we use different masking. So here we take 1, B is 1 as masking. Here we take B is 2 as masking for domain separation. The A in the masking serves as counter. We add all blocks, and in the end, we truncate to T bits. And from a high-level perspective, this is an encrypt then MAC design. We have counter mode encryption and a Wigman-Carter-Soup style authenticator. It's fully parallelizable. It only uses a single permutation P and only uses it in a forward direction. The most important thing is that we managed to prove that if P behaves well, then this construction is secure, and we can meet the NIST parameters with a 160-bit permutation. And this is the first instantiation, which is Dumbo. And Dumbo is Elephant with a 160-bit permutation. It's the most minimalist design, so it meets NIST parameters. We've got a more conservative variant, which is Jumbo, which is sponged based on a 176-bit permutation. It's a more conservative design. And sponged 176 is ISO-IEC standardized. And finally, we've got Delirium, which is Elephant instantiated with Ketchak 200. And this is a high security variant. And I would like to mention that Ketchak F200 is specified in a NIST standard. One side remark, in the original presentations, I had actually a picture of the Disney Dumbo, the Big Jumbo, and the logo of the Delirium beer. But for copyright reasons, we decided to make our own pictures. That concludes my presentation. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Bart. So if you have questions for Bart, please write them to the chat and we will take them at the end of the session. So next talk, we will have the presentation of ISAP v 2.0, and it will be Christoph de Browning that will give this presentation. So
hi, thanks for the nice introduction. I will aim to share my screen. It worked, perfect. This presentation is about a family of authenticated encryption schemes called ISAP v 2.0. My name is Christoph, and this is joint work with Maria, Stefan, Florian, Bart, whom you have seen in the previous talk, Robert and Thomas Unterlugauer. So let us first start with a short motivation why we designed ISAP v 2.0. Today, we kind of live in a world consisting of devices performing some sort of cryptographic test. And those devices seem to get more and more every day. And many of them operate in environments where an attacker might have physical access to such devices, which often means that cryptographic security alone is not enough in such use cases. What's more is that the implementations of those cryptographic schemes have to withstand implementation attacks like side channel and fault attacks. So the question in this scenario is, what do we do now? One take on this problem is to see it as a problem of the implementation and try to solve it just on the implementation level. An alternative approach to this is to design modes and primitives considering the threat of implementation attacks, which then can lead to mode, which provides some sort of increased resistance against side channel and fault attacks, or typically to primitives, which have been designed to ease the protection on their implementation level of them. So our goal in the design of ISAP v 2.0 was to provide an excellent out-of-the-box experience for engineers who want to implement authenticated encryption and harden this implementation against side channel and fault attacks. To do so, we designed the mode with increased resistance against classes of side channel attacks like differential power analysis, and fault attacks like statistical ineffective fault attacks or differential fault attacks. And this increased resistance against fault attacks is the major benefit of ISAP v 2.0 over the original proposed version ISAP v 1.0, which we have presented at FSE in 2017. We instantiate the mode with primitives which allow for additional efficient implementation countermeasures. We did not design primitives ourselves for ISAP v 2.0. Instead, we based instances on already well-established and analyzed permutations like the 400-bit catch-hack permutation, which has been specified in NIST FIPS 202, and the permutation of the first choice for lightweight applications in CISA of ASCON. So now let us discuss quickly the high-level strategy that we follow in the mode. The mode is inspired by fresh rekeying, which means that we always utilize fresh nonces to derive session keys. And this works very well to protect the encryption, since there we can always choose fresh nonces. For the decryption, we rely on the two-pass scheme, namely encrypt the MAC, which means that we do a verification before decryption, and in the MAC we are able to derive the session key from the whole data, essentially, so that with the help of the MAC we then can ensure that we never decrypt with the same nonce different ciphertexts, which then counteracts plain text recovery attacks via side channels. For ISAP v2.0, we are also able to provide a proof in a leakage resilient setting. For this, we assume a non-adaptive bounded leakage, and that one permutation call leaks lambda bits of its input plus output. And for repeated inputs, the same information is leaked. The proof relies on the combination of results on the duplex construction and on the suffix keyed sponge, and the results on the suffix keyed sponge you will see later this day, so stay tuned for this. Here you can see the bound. The bound is quite complex, so we refer to the paper for full details, but what you can already see in this bound is the influence that these lambda bits of leakage have on the bound, and here you can clearly see that to limit the advantage of the attacker, you want to keep this leakage small. So finally, let me conclude. At least to me, it seems that side channel and fault attacks become more and more a threat in practice to implementations of authenticated encryption. And so we've designed ISAP v2.0, which eases the protection of implementations and is also quite efficient if protection against implementations is a must. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Christoph.
Okay, the next talk will be Zodiac, a lightweight cryptography scheme, and Michael Peters will give a talk.
Okay. Does it work?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. So Zodiac is a lightweight primitive that we introduced, like the other talks, for the NIST lightweight competition, and more or less 2 years ago, and it's also in the second round of the competition. But recently, over the years, more and more crypto is also happening on other media, and like, for instance, the social media. And so for this short talk, I invite you to make a talk what would happen, for instance, in Twitter. So Zodiac is actually a stateful object that provides a very rich API that works at a string level and that works at in keyed and unkeyed mode. So with Zodiac, you start with initializing the state with 3 optional parameters, so the key, an identifier, and a nonce. And then there are 2 interface, absorb and squeeze, that can be used in both keyed and unkeyed mode to either absorb the string or to produce a string. And then in keyed mode, you can also encrypt and decrypt a message. You can also easily squeeze a new key, and then you can reset the state. So with this simple interface, what you can do is build basically any use case in symmetric crypto that you like at application level. You can, of course, do hashing, not only of a single string, but multiple string. But if you also go in keyed mode, you can build stream cipher, PRNG, and also things like macking of a message, authenticated encryption with or without associated data. And one nice feature is that also you can build sessions, meaning that, for instance, in one session, you can have a multiple message sent to the other device. And with the squeeze key, it's very easy to roll new keys with this simple interface. So under Zodiac, we create a new mode that we call cyclist. And cyclist actually is a compact mode based on duplex. And Zodiac provides a generic security level of 128 bit. If we analyze the security of the unkeyed cyclist, actually reduces to the sponge with a capacity of 256 bit. And if we analyze the security of keyed cyclist, actually it reduces to a full state key duplex with a few extensions. I invite you to read the paper for more detail on this analysis. Internally, Zodiac uses XODO, and XODO is a new permutation that we introduced 2 years ago with XOOF, and it's based on the idea of Gimli to produce very nice and compact permutation. XODO also provides actually a very good diffusion, and in fact better than the one we have with Keccak F400. So in the paper, we improved the bonds that we have for the best trail, for differential trails and linear trails. And if we reduce the permutations to 3 rounds, we see that actually XODO already provides a better diffusion than the one we get with Keccak F400. And if we go for higher number of rounds, we see that the trend is growing in favor of XODO. Again, more detail in the paper. So in software, we implemented Zodiac in software, and actually Zodiac is super fast. So as a comparison, we can use AES-138 CTR as a comparison. And if we compare it with Zodiac in encrypt mode, we see that Zodiac provides a throughput that is 20% higher than the one you get with AES CTR. And if we only consider the use case of absorbing, then we actually go through the roof and we get a throughput that is more than double. We also implemented Zodiac in hardware, and there, if you can have, for instance, an area of 9 kilogate equivalent, with a single primitive, you have enough throughput to feed 8 gigabit internet gate. And if you want for protecting the integrity of this gate, and if you want to do encryption, then you have enough throughput to feed 5 such gate. To summarize, we think that Zodiac is actually light and fast, so not only at the mode level, but also if you consider use case at application level. So there is really little overhead because the mode is very compact. But also one unique property of Zodiac is that we consider such channel attacks for the design, and we included many different features to make it stronger against these attacks. And for instance, if you implement Zodiac in a recommended way, it's not difficult to make the secret in the primitive a moving target, meaning that there will never be long-lasting secret in the design, which makes it very strong against such channel attacks. So thank you for your attention. Check the video and the paper for more details, in particular for more example of use, for better design, security analysis of the design and the permutation, and for more information on the software and hardware. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next talk is lightweight EAD and hashing using the Spark permutation family, and Leopard will give the talk. Leo, here you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to talk about a paper which is a joint work with Christophe, Alex, Luan, Johan, Alexei, Veselin, and Qingzhu. I'm Léo Perrin, and I'm going to talk about the Sparkle suite of algorithms. So the idea of this competition is to have algorithms that are as light as a feather. But this is not a very specific definition. What does lightweightness mean? If you look at feathers, you have feathers with all kinds of shapes and forms and weights. So what we did is that we have chosen a very specific form of lightweightness that we have defined. And so what we wanted to achieve with these algorithms was first security. Obviously, that's cryptography, that's the point. We also wanted to have algorithms that are easy to implement on microcontrollers. We wanted to have a small code size and a high speed. And we wanted to enable trade-offs between, for instance, speed and security level. So our algorithms are optimized specifically for microcontrollers. We have left aside, for instance, hardware efficiency. And we have provided a full family of algorithms to enable these trade-offs. So our approach overall is permutation-based. So we use, for instance, Sponge for hashing. It is args-based, so we have modular additions because they're very efficient in software and can provide good diffusion, etc. And we rely on what we call the long trail strategy for our security arguments. So this is ALZ. It's the key component which is at the core of our permutation. It operates on two 32-bit words, and you have the diagram here. So the box plus, so the square with the plus inside is a modular addition. These are rotations, these are XORs, and these are constants. If you want to know more about this specific component, we have a dedicated paper which studies all of its properties, its differential properties, its linear properties, integral properties, you name it, which we presented at Crypto. You can also find it on ePrint. And the key thing to understand about ALZ is that one iteration provides about as much protection as a single round of AES, which is not that much, but 2 rounds provide even better bounds than 2 rounds of AES. So what we need then is to try and find a way to design a round function in such a way that we have 2 iterations of this function that appear. And the way we do this is with a structure like this. So you have your ALZ instances that are applied in parallel, and here you have a linear permutation, which is used within a Feistel round to provide some diffusion. And what is nice with such a structure is that you do have your double instances. Sorry, there we go. What happens then is that since we have these double instances, we can use the better bounds. And much more importantly, since there are very few branches, so this is our widest instance with 8 ALZ instances in parallel in total, there are not many truncated differential trails that are possible. And so we can brute force all of them, and in this way derive bounds for the differential and linear probabilities. The result of this process is that we have designed 3 permutations that operate on 256, 384, and 512 bits. So they are called Sparkle N, where N is one of these 3 values. And here you have an implementation of all 3 of them. You just need to change the number of branches here and the number of steps, and that will give you any Sparkle instance, just with this one implementation here. So these are just the permutations, but that's not what we submitted to the NIST. That's not what they wanted. They wanted to have AEAD. So for that, we have used the Beetle mode. We have used the Beetle mode, which is a variant of just a simple duplexed sponge, because it allows us to have a higher rate for a given security level. So higher rate meaning that we can process bigger blocks, meaning that we can be faster. And for hashing, we just use the sponge construction because it's well understood. We have applied small tweaks to each mode. So it's not really at the mode itself, it's more on the permutation in the way it's used within the mode. In the AEAD case, we use rate masking to prevent some specific attacks. And in hashing, we use what we have called indirect injection for the same purpose. I explained those in the video, which you can find on YouTube. It's also in the paper, of course. We have slim and big instances of the permutations. So the idea is that the slim instances, so the big instances use more rounds and they can be used in any mode. We use them only during initialization and finalization in our algorithms. And slim instances use fewer rounds and they can only be used in sponge-like modes where the rate is where we have put it. The idea of the slim permutations is that we have restricted the analysis of the differential and linear trails, for instance, to those which are relevant in sponge mode. These are used in between message block processing in our primitives, so most of the time, because they're the fastest. In the end, we have the AEAD algorithms called SVEM. We have 4 different instances which are described with their rate and capacity. All these instances use different variants of the permutation. And we also have hashing, it's called ESH. We have 2 instances. They have the same rate of 128 bits, but they have different permutation sizes and thus different capacities. And we have also provided XOFs that are based on ESH if you need those. They are not part of the NIST submission, but they are described in this paper. On benchmarks, we fare pretty well on microcontrollers. It was our goal. On 32-bit platforms, we are consistently among the very best. On 8-bit AVR, we are usually right behind Comet. And in fact, s-256, as you can see on this slide, is way ahead. So this is a picture I took from this benchmark, which is not one we did. And what you can also see on this slide, and also for AEAD, is that we do offer a trade-off between security and performance. our higher security variants, like in this case, the bigger hash function, remain very competitive in terms of performances. And if you can afford them, you can use those instead of the faster but lower security variants. So we wanted to have security, optimization for microcontrollers, small code size, and have trade-offs. And basically, we have achieved all of those. For security, we have strong arguments thanks to the LTS approach and the properties of ALZ, which we understand well. As you could see from the C implementation, all the permutations can be implemented in C code that is clear and fits in just one slide, half a slide even. The small code size and the high speed have been confirmed by our own benchmarks, but also by external benchmarks. And we do allow trade-offs between the code size, speed, and also security. So implementers can pick and choose the variants of our algorithm that suits their needs best. And with that, I will join Mr. Sparkle to thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leo, for the presentation. So the next talk will be the Subterranean 2.0 Cipher Suite by Johan Demen, Pedro Mat Costa Masolino, Ali Reza Merad, and Jan Rotella. And Jan will be giving the talk.
Is it okay with the slides now?
Yeah, we can see them.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. So a bit of history. So this refurbishing of the old Subterranean. Johan wanted, when I was at Radboud, to refurbish the old Subterranean that dates back to 1992. And then I jumped on the project, and Pedro jumped on the project for the hardware implementations. And later on, Ali Reza Merdad jumped to provide bounds on the differential trails. So this Subterranean 2.0, it comes with three primitives: a XOF, a DEC, and a session authenticated encryption scheme. And XOF and DEC are keyed and unkeyed mode, and it can process arbitrary length strings and multiple string also. The refactoring is in two levels. At the duplex level, the important thing to note is that the rate will be 32 and per one round between each squeezing and keyed absorbing. And note that our state size is 257 bits. And I will talk about this in 2 slides, just to have a small knowledge on what is going on. In unkeyed absorbing, we have a rate of 8 bits. So we have 1 byte, but that's per 2 rounds. And that is the aim for 112 bits of security for the NIST call. At the mode level, we chose to process 8 blank rounds between absorbing and squeezing, and that's except for this encryption decryption in the session authenticated encryption. And there, in this case, we rely on nonce uniqueness. So at a high level, how Subterranean works. As I have only 5 minutes here, I will only talk about this session authenticated encryption. And the session authenticated encryption, it works as follows. And you split all strings into blocks of length 32. We only have 4 bytes for each types of string. You start with initialization with absorbing the key and the nonce. Then you have these 8 blank rounds. And afterwards, you have this associated data, and you use the output Z, that also 32 bits, to use as a key stream. And then you add, when you process your plain texts, and you can apply again 8 rounds, and then you have the tag at the end. But what is really important to notice in Subterranean here is how we input and extract the bits, which is kind of different. Indeed, we have only one, so we really have to be careful on how to absorb and extract. And actually, the run function looks as follows. So it's only 4 mappings. You start with the key mapping on 257 bits. Then you have a iota mapping that is just the addition of a constant at position 0. It's just 1 bit that is complemented. Then you have this theta function that takes 3 bits. And this is a mixed layer, and at the end you have a shuffle layer that is P, and this P, the input bit, the output bit of bit 0 is taking input bit 0. Output bit 1 is input bit 12. Output bit 2 is input bit 24. That this PSI receives as 12 times I. And it appears that this 12 that defines this P mapping is a generator of the multiplicative group Z over 257 Z star if you delete the 0. And naturally, if you you have this multiplicative group that is of order 256. So if you put to the power 4 this 12, then you get a value that is 176. And naturally, this 176 is of order 64. Hence, this 12 to the power 4 gives us 64 distinct positions in the whole state. And we use those positions to extract and absorb. And we extract and absorb and squeeze in this we absorb and squeeze in this setting. So to squeeze, we output the sum of 2 of those bits. So that gives 32 bits. And to absorb, we absorb the first element of this multiplicative subgroup. So we have to notice that we absorb and squeeze into non-consecutive bits. Let's now talk about this hardware results. So it appears that we're really targeting hardware lightweight, as Leo talked earlier. You cannot be lightweight for everyone, and subterranean is for hardware. So it's really meant for ASIC, and we are up to now ranked first on throughput and energy in this NIST competition. But that's only for ASIC, and this has been confirmed by benchmark. To conclude my 5 minutes talk, the security strength we want to achieve is 128 bits for the SCID mode, the DEC, and the S-2 authenticated encryption, and it's 112 bits for the ZOF mode, for the unkeyed mode. We believe that the security strength of subterranean is still strong, and we already have 2 third-party analysis paper. One is published at TOSC, and I think it will follow just my talk, and one is on ePrint up to now. But we really want to encourage third-party cryptanalysis on subterranean, and also it's lightweight, so we have 257 bit state. The important point to notice is that the number of operations per bit absorbed or squeezed is very, very low. And also, as you have only one that is quadratic between each absorption, you have something that is suitable for masking. This has been confirmed by benchmark, and if you want to hear more, you can go to the paper or to the long video. We have very nice stuff about the trail bonds, the security analysis, the math properties of the linear layer. We have some history of subterranean and all the hardware implementation. And let me finish by big thanks to Johan, Pedro, and Ali Reza for making this possible.
Thank you, Yann. So the next talk will be Cube-Based Cryptanalysis of Subterranean SAE. This is by Fukang Liu, Takanori Isobe, and Vili Meyer. And Fukang will be giving the talk. Maybe some delay. Fukang, can you hear us? Is your mic working? Okay. Okay, maybe what we can do is to switch on to some question for the moment, and maybe when he's ready, I will follow up and launch the presentation. Yeah.
I think this is what we should do now. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm not sure I cannot see him in the participant for the moment. All right, so let's move on for the questions. We already have a few questions. Maybe I should start by asking the first one. Actually, there was a question by Or that was for Bart for the first talk that was asked in the chat. Bart already replied, but maybe it's good, Bart, if you can have the opportunity to explain your reply to everyone, because maybe not everyone is looking at the chat directly for the question. So the question was, what is the claim security level for multi-user security? I mean, multi-user setting for Elephant, Dumbo, and Jumbo.
Yes, the answer to that is easy because we didn't claim anything. However, it's quite easy to analyze. If you dive into the proof, you see that we kind of base ourselves on a mask Evan-Munster tweakable block cipher, so we can see that the multi-user security does not really degrade. The only place where it degrades is in the individual key-dependent terms in the mask Evan-Munster thing, which are linear. So in conclusion, this means that if you would prove it, only some linear terms in the bound would get multiplied by U, the number of users. So technically, this gives a small loss depending on the application, depending on the instance, but it's kind of negligible. That's what we expect. But once again, we didn't prove it, so this should not be considered an official claim. Thanks for your question.
Do you think this is ongoing work? Is this something that the Elephant team will be working on?
I'm not working on it right now, but I think it's a good idea to actually write a formal note about this. Okay. So I thank all for suggesting that.
All right, thanks. I see that, okay, you just connected, so yeah. So maybe we're gonna switch to your talk now, and we're gonna continue the question after.
Hey.
All right, so the last talk, so then is Cubebased Cryptanalysis of Subterranean SAE by Fukang Liu, Takanori Zobe, and Willy Meyer, and Fukang will give the talk.
Sorry for being late. So I will talk about the cryptanalysis in this session. So the title is Cube-based cryptanalysis of subterranean SAE. So subterranean SAE is a sponge-based AAD scheme based on subterranean 2, which has been presented before me. So it has 7 steps. So it can be seen from the illustration. Only one round of permutation is used to proceed each sub-2-bit input block. And the blank rounds play an important role to ensure the security of the whole scheme. So we will consider the attacks so we will consider the state recovery attack in a non-misuse setting and the attacks in the non-respecting setting by reducing the number of blank rounds. So all the attacks will rely on some simple properties of the nonlinear function used in the round function R. R is composed of 4 operations, chi, iota, theta, and pi. And the chi is the same with that used in the Kerchak permutation. So for such a quadratic Boolean function, there are some well-known simple properties. The first, xi always appears in the expression of yi. Second, xi plus 1 appears in the expression of yi only when xi plus 2 is 1. Third, xi plus 2 appears in the expression of yi only when xi plus y is 0. So based on these simple properties, we can achieve an efficient state recovery attack in a non-misuse setting. The same idea can be extended to the non-respecting setting. I will focus on the attacks in a non-misuse setting in this short talk. So I will use 4 types of conditional cube tester to recover the secret state bits. So the type 1 conditional cube tester is to recover the secret state bits next to the injected positions. Specifically, we can choose 2 cube variables v0, v1 at s0, s1. If a specified condition on s0 does not hold, then the quadratic term v0, v1 will appear at the ciphertext v2. However, if the condition holds, the quadratic term will not appear. So if the cube sum of the Z2, the ciphertext is non-zero, we can know that the 1-bit condition does not hold. Otherwise, the 1-bit condition holds. So whatever the cube sum is, we can always recover one secret state bit of secret bit. And this is a concrete example. So we can set a cube variable V0 at S04. Then if propagation 2 holds, so if propagation 2 holds, it will propagate to the position 21. So if we choose a cube variable V1 at S122, if propagation 2 holds, then there must be a quadratic term in the ciphertext, so the position 1. However, if the propagation 2 does not hold, there can't be such a quadratic term in any bit of the ciphertext. So we can construct distinguisher and detect whether propagation 2 holds, and whether propagation 2 holds is related to a secret state bit. And these are the parameters. And for the type 2 conditional cube tester, it is only slightly different from type 1. We will choose 2 cube variables at S1. And similarly, we can recover some secret bits of S0. We will use only 2 parameters for type 2 conditional cube tester. I will skip type 2. And for the type 3, so based on type 1 and type 2, the recovered information is still too small. So we need to recover more information. For the type 3 conditional cube tester, different from type 1 and type 2, we will choose cube variables at S0, S2, rather than S0, S1. So if the specified condition on S0 does not hold, then the quadratic term will appear. Otherwise, the quadratic term will not appear. So this is a concrete example. If we choose a cube variable V0 at S01, after 2 round permutation for the variable V0, if propagation 3 holds, then it must propagate to the position next to the injected position 15. So if we choose a cube variable V0 at S215, if propagation 3 holds, there must be a quadratic term in the ciphertext. So the position 44 and the 129. However, if propagation 3 does not hold, there can't be such a quadratic term. So we can recover, again, we can construct a distinguisher and recover some secret state bits. For the previous 3 types of conditional cube testers, we can only recover the state bits next to the injected positions. So the recovered information is still too small to recover the whole state. So we propose type 4 conditional cube tester to recover more state bits not next to the injected positions. But different from the previous conditional cube testers, the condition is not added at S0, but added on S1. So based on the cube sum, we can recover some secret bits on S1 rather than S2. So according to this table, you can find we can recover many state bits not next to the injected positions, thus allowing us to recover many information of the whole secret state. And for the attacks in a non-malicious setting, we need to send an encryption query at first, and our goal is to recover 3 consecutive secret internal states. So based on our conditional cube testers and the leaked ciphertext, we can recover 111 secret bits and 16 linear equations of each secret state. And for the remaining unknown secret state bits, we can solve it by solving a quadratic Boolean equation system with the guess and determine and the linearization techniques. The time complexity is 2 to the 16. And therefore, and this is a summary of our attacks. Thank you very much. So it is very simple. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the talk. All right. So let's move on for real to the question. Maybe I will go chronologically. So there was a question again for Bart by Mustafa. So the question was about the state size. So you mentioned that the state size is minimal, but did you take into account the masks, the nonce, the key size as well, which would be part of the states?
So I agree. So I said the minimal permutation state size, of course. Then you, of course, have added data that you need to store. That happens for many schemes. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. If you take a sponge, then you absorb the nonce in the beginning. You don't need to store it anymore. Here you do. But still, it gives a smaller permutation then. And it's kind of a trade-off what's suitable. But we didn't take this into account when saying that we instantiated with a 160-bit permutation. So our goal was to have a minimal permutation size.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's another question actually for Bart. So it's by Kazuhiko Minamatsu that says that an OCB-like rate 1 permutation base mode could halve the number of permutation calls, keeping parallelizability. And so he's curious to know about the design rationale of encryption and MAC here.
Yes, I know this OPP construction. I, of course, also know OCB. So that's a very valid question. But there were two reasons why we did this. So one of them is that we wanted to use the permutation only in forward direction. So typical permutations, many permutations are very efficient in forward direction, not in inverse direction. And also, another point is that if you take like OCB or if you take OPP, the nonce goes into the mask. And it turns out that this actually degrades security by a significant constant. It's still a small constant, but it's a significant constant. And that didn't allow me to get a minimal permutation like 160-bit permutation. So it turned out that this change, moving the nonce out of the mask, improved the security level quite a tiny bit and a sufficient amount of bits that we can actually use a very small permutation.
Okay, thanks, Bart. So there's also a question by Gaetan. I think this is more a general question so I think everyone from the session can answer if he wants to. So he says that the algorithms in the session are based on permutations. And please can you comment on the design choices to make when choosing between a permutation-based and a tweakable block cipher-based design? So in particular, like Elephant is based on a permutation, but ends up using Even-Mansur with counter mode and PMAC. Would it be more efficient to use a counter mode PMAC with a dedicated tweakable block cipher? So it's kind of also a question for Bart, but I think it's a general question for all speakers.
I was thinking that maybe someone, because it's really, he also specifically asked about efficiency, and I think that depends on implementation. So maybe someone else has a better opinion about that. Otherwise, I can answer. But
does any other speaker in the session wants to comment on this?
So in the case of Sparkle, one of the reasons why we went with permutation-based rather than tweakable block cipher-based is that we wanted to make as efficient use of space as possible. So if you have a tweakable block cipher, you also need space to store the key, and then you also need to spend time processing the subkeys. I mean, the key state to generate the subkeys. And we found it more efficient in this case to just have a state without a separation between the key part and the internal state part, and to have an operation which just operates on all of it at once, which is the idea of the sponge structure. We went also with a more classical duplexed sponge rather than something like in Elephant or in Zodiac, which is going to be good for parallelization, because with the use cases we had in mind, so again, microcontrollers, parallelization was not a priority for us. So that's why we use sequential modes in the case of Sparkle. But I don't know about the other designs.
I mean, I can answer this for ISAP. In ISAP, we had resistance against side channel attacks in mind, and so the most precious asset that you want to protect is your secret key. And if you consider a tweakable block cipher or block cipher, on the primitive level, you basically maximize the usage of the key, which is kind of already a bad start in designing such a mode. I would phrase it like that.
So Bart, do you also want to comment, or do we go to the next question?
Yes, I can comment. But I'm more, of course, I'm mostly looking for from a generic perspective. And if you look at it from a generic perspective, of course, you can use a tweakable block cipher. You can get very good bounds, like beyond birthday bound security. But then you hide kind of the security in the tweakable block cipher. So you design a dedicated tweakable block cipher. And this means kind of you make the line between generic security proof and the actual cryptanalysis more towards the construction. So it's kind of a trade-off what you want. I mean, if you well design a tweakable block cipher, you can use it. But if you well design a permutation, then you can also use a good mode on top of that. So I think this gives, I'm not advocating for one in favor of the other, but I think, I mean, generically, I think permutations are cleaner to use. But then, of course, this depends on the efficiency of the actual primitives and on how good they are designed and implemented.
Okay, I think we have some other questions that came in. Maybe we should switch to the other paper as well. So we get one question from Anne to Fukang.
Yes.
Fukang, are you here? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So the question is, so would it be possible to avoid the type of attack you're describing by modifying the linear layer only, so the theta and without changing the key?
I think a linear layer with stronger diffusing will complicate the analysis, because you can find from our analysis that the final type of the type 4 conditional cube tester much rely on the diffusing of the linear layer. So, and the time complexity of our whole attack much rely on the recovered state bits. And the type 4 conditional cube tester is very important. So if the diffusing of the linear layer is stronger, so maybe the recovered information from our type 4 conditional cube tester becomes less. So the time complexity of the whole attack will be higher. This is my opinion. But I think in general, because the algebraic degree of the round function is 2, and only one round function is used to proceed each 32-bit input block, I think the general attack framework is applicable. It's feasible, but the time complexity may be higher. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
That's all.
I actually have a very short question also for your paper. So I see that for 4 rounds, the complexity is very small, actually, very, very practical. So I guess you try to see what happens for 5 rounds. Were you very far off? I mean, was it really, really way beyond the 138, or was it like kind of close? How far were you?
Yeah, we once tried 5 rounds, but as we increase the number of blank rounds, so to construct a conditional cube tester, so we rely on the algebraic degree, right? So as the degree increase, we need to use more. We need more freedoms of degree. So we need to consider the more nonce blocks, more blocks of the nonces. Therefore, the number of the attacked rounds is increased, because we need to consider more blocks of the nonce. So you can see from the construction of subterranean, so the nonce is divided into 4 blocks. To proceed each block, there is 1 round. So to exploit 1 more round, we need to use more nonce. We need to consider more round permutation. That's all. Yes.
Yeah, so the rate is too small, basically. The rate is only 32, and then you have to go back 1 round, and you add basically more rounds.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, there is a question for Leo by Jorgen. He's asking, protecting XOR mix with addition mod powers up 2 against DPA is quite expensive in software. Do you have some other prevention against DPA attack?
So a short answer would be no, we don't have built-in protection against such attacks. So actually I was writing an answer. However, you have protection that can be implemented at a higher level than just the primitive. So you mentioned frequently changing the key, that's not something that we primitive designer need to take care of. You're free to do it, of course. And since our authenticated ciphers are based essentially on a duplexed sponge, the beetle part is a very small modification to the duplexed sponge. You can apply techniques that generically apply to sponge-based constructions. We still have some protection within the mode that we did not invent, but the way we do the initialization is such that if you were to recover information about the internal state via a side channel attack, hold on, Johan, just a second. If you manage to recover the internal state via a side channel attack, you won't be able to recover the key. You will be able then to decrypt the rest of the message, but you won't be able to make a forgery, and you won't be able to recover the key because of the way we use the key material within the mode. So it was not our focus. We tried to build some protections inside the mode so that leaking internal state is not that devastating. But you should also have a look at the literature on protecting duplex and not duplex sponge, as Johan just pointed out to me, to protect duplex structures against side channel attacks, because you have generic techniques, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other question.
Maybe also it's worth if some of the authors would like to reply as well, maybe give a more detailed a reply in the chat. I think they should do so, yeah, because it's going to be recorded on the chat. So if you want, like, maybe to insert formula or more detail answer, you should definitely do it on the chat. I have one short question. If I see no other question now, but I have one quick question for the subterranean. So for Johan, yeah, sorry, Jan. Sorry. Very short question for you. I see that so subterranean is really well. I mean, I think one of the most efficient for hardware for the authenticated encryption part. But then for the hashing, then when you look at the ranking, it's quite low. Do you have any explanation for that? Like, did you try to see compared to other design why? Usually, when you're very good for authenticated encryption, usually it means your primitive is very efficient and it's also good in hash.
So actually, we have a very strong difference between the keyed and the unkeyed mode. In the unkeyed mode, if you hash to target 112 bits of security, you need to have at least twice the size, plus you add the rate because we are sponge-based. And so that means we really can't have this 32 bits per round. And we really meant to have, in this SAE mode, we can have this one round because you rely on nonce uniqueness. But if you hash, you have many attacks. We have a security analysis in the paper that shows that we have to take 2 rounds per 8 blocks absorbed. So that's even worse than taking 1 round between each absorbed block, because you can, as Fukang showed, you have this degree 2 function, and that's really not a permutation you can use as a black box. You need to be careful about how to choose the things. And I think if maybe Johan will correct me, but I think it's the reason why in the XOF we are worse than in the SAE mode.
The state is too small. It's just 257 bits, and we want 112 bits of security. So you need a capacity of 224 at least. But if you would absorb 1 byte per round, you can do some backtracking, and so we need some margin. So basically, we had to reduce the rates from. I think it went in phases, Jan. In the beginning, we were a bit more optimistic, but at some point we said, we cannot do more than 1 byte per every 2 rounds.
Yeah. We wanted to do 16 bits, and we reduced to 8 bits, and then we reduced to 2 rounds because we had.
Yeah, that's how it went. Yeah. But that's what. There's just a limitation. If you want to have a small state, then you have to. There's something.
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
If we could go for 96 bits in hashing, then it could probably be more comfortable, but that was not a requirement.
Thanks.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I see no other
I
question.
also have a short question for Christoph. Christoph, you mentioned that ISAP can be taught against fault attacks. What kind of fault attacks do you mean?
You mean the increased protection against fault attacks. So the longer answer is in the video where I basically explain which tweaks in the mode we made to provide increased resistance against differential fault attacks or statistically ineffective fault attacks.
So you mean all of the fault attacks in any like bias fault, because we have a wide range of fault attacks.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 You mean on the faults you induce or on the way you exploit them? So basically, we kind of so for differential fault attacks, I think it doesn't matter that much which kind of fault you induce. For statistically ineffective fault attacks, you probably rely on some biased fault that you induce, and for this, due to the way we absorb the nonce and generate the session keys, we provide some increased protection against those attacks if you would compare it with the plain duplex mode, for instance.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess it's 9:32, so we can, I think, stop here. Right, so let's thank all the speakers of the session.